can shoot us over the recording, that would be great.
Yes. Okay, well, I can begin with my part and hopefully some more people jump on. So first, I'm going to introduce myself. I'm Samantha Orslak, and I am the head of marketing here at MDS, Marine Data Systems. Before we kick off the webinar, I'm just going to give a quick overview of who we are and the partnership that we have with Shieldox. So first slide.
Samantha, give me 1 second. I'm having a little bit of technical difficulties. So hold on 1 second. Figures just as the webinar starts. Hold on. Okay. All right. We're all ready.
Okay.
Everybody, this is your Mash on the line.
Hello. So MDS is a woman-owned IT solutions and services company founded in New York City about 25 years ago. We do have offices elsewhere in the country and as well as Puerto Rico. We are partners with many different partners in the industry, and leading off with being a Microsoft Gold partner. We worked with them for a few decades now and have become Microsoft experts in regards to Microsoft 365, Azure, Teams, Windows 10 VDI is coming up, Azure Sentinel, you name it. Next slide. So here's just a quick snapshot of all the recent awards we've won, including the top 2, which would be the most relevant for this webinar, and they are the Security and Compliance Worldwide Finalist Award and the Security and Compliance for LATAM and the Caribbean Award. And this was given to us by Microsoft this year based on our year of security and compliance work. Next slide. So we do focus heavily on security as it's important and necessary for any business nowadays, but we also do managed services, infrastructure, and productivity and applications. So on the right, you can see a snapshot of all of our different offerings. In terms of security and identity, we do compliance, risk assessments, pen and vulnerability assessments, cloud security, email security, monitoring, kind of the works. We can completely do a IT infrastructure from a security standpoint or give additional protection. So now I'm going to hand it off to Shieldox to talk a little bit more about their product and how it is incorporated into the Office 365 suite of products.
Thank you, Samantha. First of all, let me introduce myself. Can everyone hear me? Yeah, I'm assuming yes. First of all, thank you for taking the time to review Shieldox with us. We're very excited to be working with Marine Data Systems. We are looking for a very fruitful partnership together. So just to give you a little bit of information about Shieldox. Shieldox was started about 2 years ago, and what Shieldox is a self-learning platform that identifies risks in shared business information. What does that mean? So Shieldox came onto the market 2 years ago. We came out of stealth mode 7 months ago. We have a very strong partnership technologically as well as on the business side with Microsoft. And that helped us to find what was missing in their ecosystem. In addition, the company is backed by some very big names in cybersecurity and in the IT world, such as Checkpoint and Viber, Juno, CyberArk. And what we do is we are a self-learning platform that identifies risks in a share business information. And right now, we're the only solution that can find those risks. We're the only one on the market that actually does what we do. And one of the benefits of this is that we don't have to involve business users at all. Shieldox works autonomously, it learns completely, and it is able to identify information and find those risks for you. So one of the great things about Shieldox is that it's intuitive, it is an AI algorithm, and it does past learning as well as ongoing learning. And it just keeps getting better and better as time goes on from all the learning that it's done. So today, business, as we know, has changed. Business happens on the cloud, and we have what we call the modern workplace today, which is great in terms of sharing and collaboration. You know, there's so many tools that we can use. It helps your organization grow. It can make work more efficient and make everyone's life easier. However, there's a problem. As information has become more accessible, and we have all these tools that we're allowed to share information, you don't know what's being shared necessarily. And if you put in too tight of a DLP or a CASB plan, you're going to block the collaboration. If you put in too low of security, so you can allow free flow of collaboration, you hurt security. So the CISO or the security department, or the security architect, who's ever in charge of this in your company, is sort of in a catch-22. How do we allow collaboration and allow information to go back and forth? However, you know, we're using traditional DLP plans, and we're using, maybe a CASB plan. If you're on Microsoft Office 365 already, you may have E3 or E5, which has different protection tools. And as we all know, those protection tools work off of a string of information, such as a social security number, bank account. You may have encryption for your legal department or HR department. And in the end, that does hurt collaboration. So what Shieldox is able to do, or what I should say, let me backtrack actually. One of the biggest problems is that nobody asks the businesses what they actually need to protect, and there's a reason for that. First of all, users don't know all the risks they've created, and 60% of risks, if you're not aware of this, or 60% of data breaches actually happen internally. And that's broken down by a number of various different factors, such as maliciousness, carelessness, stupidity, people downloading things without realizing it, people making mistakes. You know, this happens all the time. And that's a problem. And the existing tools that exist today in the market don't understand the meaning of the business information. As I said, they're looking at common phrases to find sensitive documents, or they're trying to find anomalies in a user behavior, but they don't understand the meaning of the information they're sharing. So how can they really understand what's an anomaly? Now, they don't know what to protect, because even though you have these dots in front of you, you can't connect these dots. So it becomes nearly impossible to know what's being shared, who's sharing it, and if it's a risk. But in order to have a good DLP plan or implement a CASB plan, you need to know this information, and you need to know what's being protected. You need to know this information in order to know what to protect. So without involving the business, Shieldox allows you to know what is being shared, where it's going from and who it's going to, who is sharing it, and if it's a risk. And just to give you a little bit of backdrop, we actually, I had a POC with a client who, the minute he had installed Shieldox and started to see the risks, was surprised that his satellite office in India was sharing financial information, which he was fully unaware of. He had no idea this was happening. So the wonderful thing about this, first of all, is that you don't need to involve, as I said, the business units. It's autonomous. You identify business exposures, and from those identification of business exposures, we then give you actionable items. And Shieldox, as I said, is a self-creating. It's a self-learning tool. It's autonomous. You connect to us via a Graph API. And what our platform does, it looks at the motion of your information to understand what's moving. And it understands the meaning of those shares because it's an AI tool. And what you get, as I stated, are actionable items for your business information risks. And again, I can't express this enough because I've been on both sides. I've been a business user and I've been on the IT side. You don't have to involve the business users. People sort of don't believe us when we tell them this, but it is true. Now, you might say, how long does it take to connect to? It literally takes about 5 minutes. It could take maybe 6 or 7. I don't want to be a total liar. It doesn't matter if you have 1,500 users, you have 7,000 users, or you have 20,000 users. We've done onboarding with clients of all different sizes. What will happen when you're onboarded is you connect to Shieldox via a Graph API, and we are able to scan your Active Directory and find your active users on Exchange. So one of the beauties about Shieldox is that there's no policies that need to be written. There's no extra setups, there's no installations, and there's no user involvement. It literally is the simplest solution ever. And after you connect, Shieldox works in the background to scan the Active Directory, SharePoint, OneDrive if you're using it, and Exchange. So it learns from past sharing, and it understands, again, I can't emphasize this enough, what's moving, where, and whether it's a risk. Now, with Shieldox, you see ROI from day one. And why is that? Because a lot of the times when you install a product, there's a training curve or a learning curve. We had actually one client that we onboarded, 7,000 users, say to the channel manager for Israel, how long is this going to take, or how much time do I need to dedicate to it? How much IT personnel do I need to dedicate? And we basically said, you're admin for Exchange. So there's no new training or hiring costs. There's no user involvement, so there's no disruption on the business user side. And it does reduce legal risks. And I'll show you how it reduces legal risks when we go over the product. And it reduces legal risks because if information gets shared that shouldn't be shared, for instance, if you're a public company and something gets shared before it gets released publicly, you could be in for a lot of legal ramifications, especially if you're on the market and your stock is being traded. So, you know, the bottom line is that what we're doing is we're cutting out the noise for the CISO, and we're putting the control back in the hands of the business. So just to give you some real world use cases, I'm going to give you a high level overview. Then we'll have Avner do. We have Avner Gorin with us as well, who's the head of customer success. He'll give you a live demo of the product and go into more in-depth user case. And in addition to that, we would then like to take questions from anyone who has them. So if you take a look at the product actually looks like a shield, a radar. And the closer you are to the radar, the more of a risk you are. And this was a use case that was built for one of our clients in the United States. And they found out, this is exactly what I said, that the financial report was exposed outside the company before they released it. This was a public company, and this could have gotten them into serious legal trouble. In addition to that, another use case that we have is Shieldox found the fired employee had leaked confidential business information to outside organizations. We have a client in the United Kingdom that wanted to fire 80 people. But before they did that, they wanted to know if any of those ex-employees had leaked confidential company information when they got notice, or in the weeks beforehand. Maybe they felt they were getting notice. Maybe there was an announcement that there would be a reduction in the workforce. Without Shieldox, they wouldn't have been able to know what these people were sharing, and they wouldn't be able to understand those shares. I mean, if you think about a real world situation, even other products, which Avner can go into more, something like MCAS, which would give you visibility, it still isn't going to show you the risks. And what we're able to do is to show you those risks and actually show you what's being shared. In addition to that, here's another use case where we found confidential customer information was exposed. This was a share that was put into a OneDrive folder. And, when you have information in cloud folders, you can't always know exactly what or how it's being shared. But with Shieldox, we can find those risky exposures for you. And another one was Shieldox had found upper management legal information was shared outside the organization. So what we found in onboarding people, a lot of the times, or onboarding companies, I should say, senior management, especially the CFO, they never think that information is being leaked or shared. And you would be surprised how much information has been shared that they were not aware of. Just as I said, the use case with the client that I installed 2 weeks ago, literally his words were, and Avner can attest to this because we were on the phone call together, that it was an eye opener for him. We onboarded an Israeli airline called El Al. I don't know how many of you are familiar with it. 7 minutes, we were able to onboard 7,000 users. So with Shieldox, what you can do, another beauty of the product and another value add, is that you can basically break it down and view your risks by anomalies. You can view the sprawl. You can break it down by shared folders. You can break it down by companies that it was shared with. You can break it down by employees. You can slice and dice it any way you want. And we believe, that Shieldox is the only tool that can help you find and understand those risks and can answer those impossible questions and help you to do your job. So within just 5 minutes, it's self-learning. It has zero maintenance or business involvement, and you get to see, and then you can act upon it. We really have not found anything in the market that compares to this. And another advantage, another thing that you can do, even if you wanted to do a trial, you are able to see what your risks are in a shared environment automatically just by doing a trial. So you're able to get a risk assessment basically on what your shares would be and what would be a risky share and what would be a safe share. Now, with all of that being said, I'm going to hand it over to Avner. Avner, do you want to pull the screen or do you want me to just disconnect?
Yeah, thanks, Felicia. I can pull the screen.
Okay, great.
So just let me know if my screen is available.
Yes, we do see it.
Okay, great. So, hey there, thanks for joining. So Felicia's been explaining a bit on the higher level. I just want to show you a bit of like Shieldox in action so you can get a look and feel of how, Shieldox solves the problems. As Felicia mentioned, what we are is really a pretty simple app. We connect to the sources of information. So in a typical Microsoft 365 environment, we'd be connecting to wherever the files are stored and or transferred through. So that would be the Exchange, OneDrive, SharePoint, etc. And what really Shieldox wants to know is who is sharing what with who, and does this by monitoring the activities. So all of the sharing activities. So if when you send out an email with an attachment, So we're going to pick up on that. When you make a share through OneDrive, we're going to pick on that. If you save a file to an already shared OneDrive folder, we're going to pick up on that. And then it takes all this information and kind of crunches the number, trying to look at different types of patterns of sharing to really bring us to two different insights. The first is whether or not, like, how spread out the information is. And the other is whether or not any individual sharing activity could be considered unusual enough to be a risk. And when you couple that with a classification system that kind of understands what types of documents are being shared and what type of information is being exposed, what you really get is a kind of overview that lets you understand the business processes inside the organization. You get to see where the information is moving, and from there you can make very educated decisions about what your security needs actually are. And we see this all the time, how the CISOs themselves are kind of put into an impossible situation where, on one hand, they're supposed to, they're tasked with protecting the information, the sensitive information of the organization. And this could be just for business reasons, but it could also be for compliance, regulatory. There could be very serious legal repercussions for any leaked information. So no organization wants to deal with that. But on the other hand, when they ask the next question, okay, so what should I be protecting? Suddenly they're having a tough time getting answers, either because people aren't giving them the time of day. It's kind of hard to get the attention of these stakeholders from the different departments. And also because they themselves, the department heads, don't necessarily know. I mean, if you go to your the head of legal and you ask them, okay, where are all of the different contracts that we have? Which are the external law firms are we in touch with? Who should we be monitoring? What is the information there? They might not even know themselves, and to figure out is going to be, a huge project involving going through every one of the people in the organization. And so at that point, they're just going to give the CISO the answers. We don't know exactly. And then the CISO has really just two decisions to make. Do they do top down or bottom up? And by top down, that would mean blocking everything. So putting up rules that are very wide in their coverage. And what happens is really lots of information, even if it should be getting out, doesn't reach its destination. Or they'd be setting policies, bottom up, where they only, after they find out there's been some incident, do they then make a policy that would handle it. But then, of course, they're exposing themselves and the organization to a lot of problems. So usually they choose the first option, better safe than sorry. And then that's a lot of their time is then spent dealing with, first of all, false positives. And second, blowback from the stakeholders in the organization who just wanted that information to go out. They sent an email to the customer. It's super urgent, super important. Everyone wants it to move. But then suddenly the security system has blocked it. And they're coming to the CISO demanding explanations and to fix it in real time. So those are kind of the pains that we've already noticed from the CISO. Now let's kind of see how Shieldox itself really just makes their job so much easier by kind of serving as that flashlight, which knows how to shine in all those dark corners, because the main problem with setting policies like that is you can't protect what you don't know exists. So let's start just with that very simple scenario of, okay, where is my legal information and where is it going? And for that, we can look at the information types in an organization. So as Felicia mentioned, we connect to the 365, very quick connection, and then it starts learning. And within 24 hours, you should have some results. Usually a typical situation is for 1 or 2 weeks more for trying to gather the intelligence necessary for the information to kind of get meaning. And but then it starts to understand where the information is. So here I've gone to a view, which is the information types of our organization. And our views are different ways of taking the results of the analysis and grouping them in different ways. So in this case, we're grouping it based on the information type, and we can see all of the legal information that's been shared within the organization. Right, I can see that there's been these agreements that have been shared out. And for each of these, I can then deep dive and see the complete path that the information took. And now we're clustering the information. So it's not just a specific file, but it could be also other files, other versions, other copies. Obviously, if the information is exposed, it doesn't matter which copy of a file got into the wrong hands. On an operational level, the entire documents, or all of those documents, are as good as exposed. So we can also see what the exposures were, who shared them, when, what folder they came from. All of this is information that is very important for the organization, for the CISO, to be context to the decision, because they don't necessarily know what this document is. They don't know where it is going, why it should be going, if it's allowed or not allowed. And the only thing that they can really know is who sent it and what the name was and what kind of information was stored inside. So what we can have here is seeing that it's a part of a legal agreement, this could give them that added understanding of what the information is. And we can see that it moved internally, but it was also shared externally. We can see who it reached and how it got there. Now we have to realize that once this information was shared, there's really no way to take it back. The only thing we can do is block from that point forward. But at any given moment at this time, one of these external recipients could have downloaded the document and then dispersed it however they see fit. So it's really important to know who it went out to, so that if eventually it reaches a point where there's some exposure was made, so that we can backtrack and find out the exact path, how it reached to these places. The next thing we can also see is for the different types of information, where they've been going. So I can focus on the finance, and I want to see, where is my finance information going? I can filter it by focusing on this information type and setting up the organization's filter, so I can then see which different domains were exposed to financial information, external domains. And this is, of course, very important to make sure that your financial information is going to the right place. And this would be the place also where you might pick up on some kind of an anomaly, where information that isn't usually shared just finds itself in a place. So if you see on this list, one of your biggest competitors, that might be an indicator that something has really gone wrong. Another thing that we can take a look at, as we were mentioning, is to focus on specific employees. So we can see who in our organization has been sharing information with this organization as part of our backtrack. So for example, we can look at, again, we can lose the filters and select specific employees. So now I can see that Heidi here has been sharing this information, and this is the financial information. We can see who it was shared to and by whom, when each step went, and what was the path that it took. This, at the end of the day, what we're trying to do is enhance the CISO's ability to understand the movement of the information and then pick up on potential risks. And this can be before an event happens, or it can be after there's some specific event. Another case, as we mentioned, so if we have a specific high-ranking employee, let's say our CFO, we might want to see who they're sharing with, just to make sure they're all in the up and up, and to make sure they aren't siphoning information. Now, you might say, well, the CFO, obviously, we trust that person. We just, why would we be suspicious? Now, so it's important to mention, right? We're not necessarily looking at employees because we suspect them of everything, but just because of the type of information that they're exposed to. The more sensitive it is, the more costly even a mistake would be. And so it's really important for us to be able to understand what where the information is moving. And there are also other types of employees who hold a risk in themselves. So the CFO's secretary, for example, is one of those transparent employees who oftentimes no one really takes notice to, but they're exposed to all of the information of the CFO with a lot less, I would say, control over their actions. In addition, you could have employees that have, received their 2-week notice. They're going to be fired, and we want to be able to make sure that in this period, they're not then making any shares beyond what might be expected. And so here as well, we can create views that are focused on specific employees. And we can, for example, see that a specific, we can choose, to see which external contact this specific employee is dealing with. We can filter for that employee. And then we create a radar and we save it. And so we can always then refer to this radar until the employee has been terminated. And last, a very important thing that we see here is the anonymous sharing. So that's also a great use case for how security people, even no matter how secure they think they've set it up, there's always going to be things that they might be missing. So if you know about anonymous sharing, so that's a OneDrive option, which unfortunately is kind of the default. So any share that you make with OneDrive, the default is going to be to send an anonymous link. And of course, there's a lot of dangers with sharing anonymous links. The most important one being you don't know who it went out to. Now, in addition, when you kind of get into the deep technical aspect of it, Microsoft itself, even if you're going to look at the logs, you're not going to be able to find out who it was sent, who it was shared with, who it was sent to. So you have an anonymous link that anyone who gets it can then access that information. And you can't even know who received that link, so who might have been potentially exposed. And the best practice in this case is usually to disallow anonymous sharing throughout the organization, which, makes a lot of sense. And we've had quite a few organizations, we onboard them, and we go straight to the anonymous view just to show them the risks. And 9 times out of 10, the person there is going to say, well, we've already shut out anonymous sharing. You're not going to find anything there. Why bother looking? But then we pull up the radar and we start typing in the filter just to find the anonymous, right? And lo and behold, we get anonymous. We find that there's some kind of, and they're like, okay, that's interesting. Why is that there? That shouldn't be there. And then when we click on it, we can deep dive and see what kind of anonymous shares were created. And this is really one of those eye-opener moments, because this is something that they thought was already handled. They wouldn't have even, thought of looking for, nor would they have set a policy, because as far as they're concerned, it's been shut off. And then you find out that sometimes there are internal SharePoint items that are shared anonymously just by default, and that maybe they're legacy, and they were done before the activity was disallowed. But those shares are still there. And the remediation is pretty simple. You just go in, you delete those links, and that's it, and you're safe. And whoever tries to use that link the next time is not going to get through. But of course, you would not have known about it if you weren't looking for it. So what Shieldox is really doing, because there are no policies involved, because it's all autonomous, it's saving a lot of time for the CISO by looking through everything and, being that junior member of the security team that they might not have the budget for, who's going to, be looking at all the logs, crunching all the numbers and saying, hey, boss, look at this. This is strange. There's an anonymous share here. So that's what Shieldox is doing. It's providing that information so that the CISO can focus, instead of just searching for security events, he can focus on handling, preventing, and remediating those events, which are, of course, much more important and also deserve a lot more attention. So I hope this kind of gives a bit more understanding of what Shieldox is for, how it works, and kind of the look and feel. We'll be happy to take questions if someone wants to come in through voice or write in through the chat. Go.
Does anyone have any questions? Okay, when we're doing a presentation, there's dead silence. You feel like the comedian who's made a joke on stage and is dying a little bit. But if you do have any questions that appear afterwards, let me just bring my screen up again. Hold on one second. You can contact Maureen Data Systems. You can contact Samantha or Ash. Also, please take a look at our website, shieldox.ai. I noticed that some of you had requested a free risk assessment, which we are more than happy to do with MDS. And please contact MDS to arrange that, and they'll work in conjunction and unison with us to have that done for you. I want to thank you for taking the time today, for reviewing Shieldox, and visiting us during this webinar. And everyone, I don't see there's any questions, so I'm going to say to everyone, have a great afternoon. And thank you once again for your time. Samantha, it's all yours.
Okay. Hi, perfect. Thank you so much, Avner and Felicia. That was very informative. Again, if you come up with any questions or you want some more background on the product, feel free to reach out. I will be sending out a thank you email shortly in a few hours. So that will give you a little bit more information. I'll give you the full presentation as well. And then we can take next steps. And we will be in touch with the people that have highlighted a security assessment. All right, and everyone have a great rest of your day.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. One second, I'm still on.
Okay.